Hi YouTubers, Sunita here. Now, as you know, we're coming up for week 10 of lockdown. And during these weeks, many of us have become conscious of our own sleep. For some, we know it's a bit out of control. And today we actually meet a man whose deep interest lies in the therapeutic application of Yoga Nidra. His big focus is on insomnia and sleep-related issues, lucid dreaming, and actually dealing with stress at a very deep level. And much of this is informed from his own experience. So let's welcome Nirlpita. Hi, Nirlpita.
Hello, Sunita. Hello, everyone.
Hi. So Nirlpita, was there something in your childhood that pointed to what you're doing now?
Well, I think that a lot of what happened came when I was older, when I was a teenager, and I suddenly had an interest in things of spiritual nature. But it was really when I was in my 20s that it bore fruit, as it were. And then I discovered yoga, and particularly Yoga Nidra, which was basically, it was a life changer for me. And it was only in 2010 when I'd been working with my wife Uma for 12 or so years, and we decided to do Nidra training. And we'd been told that you couldn't do that, you couldn't just do stuff about Nidra. And we've been on a journey of exploration with it ever since. Yeah.
What is, with this approach, what's different about this approach to different types of yoga, different yoga modalities?
Well, again, because we're focusing so much on Nidra itself, so the other like asanas and hatha yoga is kind of peripheral to what we're doing now. What's happening with the Nidra is that we were told it has to be one way, and basically it was our way is the right way and everyone else is wrong, which we thought was kind of interesting, because at first we didn't know lots of people were doing it, and then we looked at what they were doing and most of them were saying our way is the right way and everyone else is wrong. And then we thought, well, you've got something that's really good and like we don't like that so much. And then we started to do a comparative exploration, and as we carried on with that, we discovered that there's more and more. In fact, we haven't found the boundaries of where Yoga Nidra can be. It just seems to keep expanding. And we've been working with it therapeutically and a lot to get to help people to be less stressed, to sleep better, to have less pain, all of those kinds of things.
So you've embraced it to support it's your work, it's your life's work, it's your wife's work and her life's work. Now you have an interesting story yourself. Would you be happy to share some of that personally, some of the experiences that you're having, and how Yoga Nidra has supported you in that way? Can you?
So you mean my health issues?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I've got a variety of health issues. I think I've got like 5 of the top 12 ailments that end people's lives, and I'm still going, much to my surprise. And I embarked. So I have 2 respiratory things. I have serious cardiac illness, diabetes. What do you call them? TIAs, strokes, all of those kinds of things. And I've been managing them with a combination of Nidra and pranayama. And what happens as a result is that I've discovered more and more stuff, which carries on, which keeps expanding. And it's just a whole thing, really.
So is the yoga? I mean, it's
I didn't tell her.
Fascinating, isn't it? Because
okay.
So much in the West we're informed that if you're experiencing any of the challenges, any of the health issues that you've just mentioned, we need to take this, we need to take this, we need to take a tablet, we need to do that. So it's here you are, like you say, enjoying life with full vibrancy, it looks to me. Yeah. And you know, do you put that down to the yoga nidra? Is there another secret? What is it?
It's the combination of the nidra and the pranayam. I do a very intense pranayam practice, which just, what it does is it keeps me going. So it's not making me better, but it's stopping me from getting worse, because my lungs are deteriorating and my heart and all of that as well. So yeah, the combination of the two in my particular case is doing wonders.
Amazing. And so when did sleep become part of your focus, Nirlpita, and what motivated that?
Well, I was an insomniac for a long time, for decades, over 3.5 decades, and I started doing this hypnosis training at the turn of the millennia, and because I was doing therapeutic sessions with women who were calling for classes. We used to teach in our home in Brixton, and some of the mums all of the mums would call up and they'd book their classes, and I found that what I was doing regularly 3 or 4 times a week was someone would book up for a class, and I'd end up doing 30 or 40 minutes therapy with them, and I just said to a colleague of mine, I have no idea what I'm doing. I need to go and train as a therapist, do some counseling. And he said, no, go and do this hypnosis training. You take it like a duck to water. And I did. I didn't know anything about hypnosis, and I was doing it. And a lot of what I was trained to do with hypnosis was actually yoga nidra. Some of it I was doing the exact same practices I was doing as a yoga teacher as clinical hypnosis. And then what happened was things just kind of moved from there, on the therapeutic side. And then so with the sleep, what happened was we had this exercise to take ourselves into trance, and I did that, and my insomnia went overnight, and I combined it with the nidra, and then I realized, oh, if I do nidra, I can just sleep really well, because I'd never done it. Always at the end of the nidra, the instructions we were told that we had to do, which we couldn't vary from, were now wake up full of vim and vigor. But if you're going to sleep, you don't want to do that. You just want to carry on. So I experimented with that, and then people kept asking me, oh, I've heard that you help people go to sleep. So I did that for 10 years before I realized that actually a lot of people can't sleep. And then I started working with people more on a more focused way, helping them to get to sleep.
So there's a couple of things there. So firstly, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, we have we train in a traditional way, a conventional way with the system, and we're trained in that way as well, Nirlpita. That actually you have to follow it like this, otherwise this bit doesn't work, or this bit doesn't work, and this is how it starts, and this is the middle bit, and this is how it should finish. But you've just suggested there that actually some of this conventional wisdom suggests that there is the potential of evolution, that things can shift and change, and that's been your experience. Yeah. So
when we started doing the Nidra training in 2010, we realized quite quickly there was so much that we didn't know, and we kept exploring and finding out more stuff and adding it to what we were doing with the teaching. And then when I got my sleep apnea diagnosis about 5 or so years ago, and I was given what do you call it, CPAP. You put this thing on, and it feeds oxygen into the lungs. And within about 3 or 4 days, I thought, I know loads about pranayam. Why just do the pranayam that I've been doing and teaching people for years and years? Because I kind of forgotten about it, because apnea does. You don't get enough oxygen to the brain. So I started doing this pranayam, Kapalabhati and Bhastrika, and I started out with about 10 rounds a day, and then I worked up to about 5,000 rounds a day, and it was quite intense. And then as a result of that, Uma talks about when she wrote her book Yoni Shakti, that she was downloading all the writing. It just kind of came to her when she was doing Nidra. Well, it was kind of like that. I had a whole load of practices based around the symbol of a golden oval or a golden egg. Well over 100, and I stopped writing them down at that point after I got to about number 83. But I'm still getting them, and I have loads and loads of practices, and I put it down to a direct link between uh, having an oxygenated brain with a pranayam,
Yeah.
and the Nidra, the combination of the two. And like, so some people said, oh, you're getting all this stuff, like you're inspired. And I said, well, actually it's a literal inspiration, because of this oxygen. And it's just like all the stuff that I know is the computer of my brain is working much more efficiently now. So I'm coming up with loads of practices. In fact, thing with creativity, for example, is people struggle with creativity. And now Uma and I, what we do is like we struggle with turning the tap off, because it went from being a little trickle to being like a gushing waterfall. It's really like that. And I think that pretty much anyone can do that.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about it, you know, we in Ayurveda, we talk about the different doshas, the different body types, and actually, you know, the Vata constitution being that one that is more energetically creative, because it's much more connected to space, to air, and kind of there's a download that's taking place, you know, constantly, so we can recognize it through, you know, through that idea, through that system. But one of the things I'm fascinated about is the lucid dreaming. So, you know, why is lucid dreaming important?
So you have lucid dreaming and you have dream yoga. And to do dream yoga, you need to be able to do lucid dreaming. So lucid dreaming is like the mechanism, if you like, where you can be conscious and aware in your dream and interact with it. And the dream yoga is when you do a spiritual practice, your meditation or sadhana, whatever it is, in your dreams. Literally, and you're aware that you're doing it. So Patanjali talks in his yoga sutras about being in a state of samadhi, and everyone goes into a state of samadhi at night when they are asleep. And he says it's worthless for most people because they're not conscious. They don't realize the great benefit of what has happened. So if people are awake, if yogis are awake, so you have this yogic sleep, yoga nidra. And then what happens in the Nidra is that a person can be conscious and engage with their spiritual practice. And there is much more benefit from doing that. It's much more powerful. And it's very useful for spiritual things, but it's very good for mundane things as well. So if someone is working on a project or a relationship or anything in their life, if they're exploring it in the state of trance, of dream, or in the hypnagogic state, which is what happens between sleep and being awake, it's much more powerful. It's much more likely that they can come up with a solution or find the creative outlets for whatever it is that they need to do.
So if you were working with somebody who that was particularly the focus, that they wanted, maybe they're working on a project, maybe it's something personal, you know, they want to experience more creativity. What kind of things would you encourage, and how would you guide them there?
Well, I work in a collaborative way. So Uma and I have pioneered this use of co-creation, where it's not us telling the people and saying this is your solution. It's more about finding out where they are, what their difficulty is, and what their ideal outcome is, and using that, kind of feeding it back into the practice. And sometimes when they're in the state of Nidra, talking to them, so that there is this kind of actual dialogue rather than a kind of metaphorical one. And what happens is that we can go very deep with people very quickly, so that whatever resources they have, so I'm working on the basis that people have the resources that they need to figure out whatever their problem is, rather than it being an external thing. And what I view my role therapeutically is to show them and help them to do that for themselves. And it seems to work very, very effectively.
Yeah.
So I don't put my baggage onto them. I say, look, here's a practice. We can use it. It'll help you get into this trance place where you're very relaxed and your creative taps are turned on, and you can figure it out yourself. And what I'm doing is I'm co-piloting with them.
So
helping them to navigate.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, so another thing that is your thing is the combination of the yoga with the hypnotherapy. So I'm presuming this is an element of what you're talking about now. So what do they both point to? What's magic there?
Well, it's interesting because Nidra is the goddess of sleep, and hypnosis comes from the Greek hypnos, who is the god of sleep. and specifically when hypnosis came to the West, when James Braid kind of made it much more respectable in the 1800s, what he said, because he went to India, he said what these Hindu and Mohammedan fakirs are doing with their practices is hypnosis. He didn't say it's like hypnosis. He says it is. And what it is there's so much overlap. And the problem that people have with hypnosis is that it's gone down a particular route. It's gone down the route of, well, we have stage hypnosis, which has a very bad reputation because it's really about social psychology and demeaning people who do it. And then there's clinical hypnosis, which is, as my tutor Peter Mabbott from he's what is he, psychologist in the hypertension unit in St Thomas's in London, where he used to be, and he, as an avowed atheist, said there are all these practices and they're really fantastic, and they've come from these people who are doing these spiritual things to expand their consciousness and become one with God. You know, it's kind of like they were really clever, but they kind of wasted it on that, where it's really good for getting people to stop biting their nails or grinding their teeth. So like, it's the application, it's the context of what you can do. You can do it for things like that, to be more healthy or more attractive or better at remembering stuff, or you can do it for spiritual exploration and evolution.
Yeah. Now, you also talk about perinatal hypnotherapy and what it can do. Tell us about that. What's that?
So when I came up with perinatal, that was really around the birth, but actually it's for all of the pregnancies, and I've done a lot of work with women and their partners for preparing for labor and for going through labor as well, and working with partners to get them to hypnotize the pregnant woman in labor so that they can do it in the birth process is the most enjoyable thing that I do, because the partners often get things wrong, and it's about reassuring them. And the women, I do hypnosis with the women without the partners, and they get it straight away like that. And it's lovely teaching. It's like teaching people meditation, like they get it the first time because they're in this special space. And then the partners come along and they say, what's going on? How does this work? And like they really slow everything down. So what I found is I do most of the work with the women, teach them how to do self-hypnosis and do all these show them how to breathe in trance and how to make themselves more comfortable and to bond with the baby. And it works very well. And then I get them to work with the partners. And it works with the partners, regardless of whether the partners believe in what they're doing or not. If they practice, it works. Yeah. They don't have to believe, but if they're really lovely people and they go, this is fantastic, but they don't practice, it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work with them doing it, is what I mean.
Yeah. It's also something. I mean, what a gift they have this for afterwards, for forever as well. You know, it's a really quite a magical, bonding experience that you've created. Well,
it's for the couple and with the child as well. And then I did this thing. Because we're not very business oriented, but then lots of mums would come to me after they'd had their babies, like 5 months, 6 months, a year later, and they'd say, Nirlpita, that stuff was really good, but I can't sleep. Can you do something for me? And I would say, well, you remember I taught you how to do self-hypnosis? Just do that again. And they would, and it works. Because like once you have it, it's always there.
It's always there.
It's always there. And it's really good for helping people to go to sleep.
Yeah.
It just is. Yeah.
Now, I looked at you doing research on you have, I can't even list all of the qualifications. You've done a lot of studying, Nirlpitas, really incredible. And what was fascinating was you have a master's in Indian religion and philosophy. So how does that inform your thinking and your practice?
Well, what I do is, so there have been all of these all of these scandals with organizations and teachers and gurus and things like that. And what I've done is I've taken a step back. One of the things that I learned when I was doing my master's at SOAS, I did a course in Buddhism. One of the courses was in Buddhism, and our tutor was he was a priest who had been at the Vatican, who'd gone to Japan and become a Zen monk, and so he had this very deep interest in Buddhist philosophy. And we had 5 Buddhist monks on our course from all over the place, all over in Nepal and Sri Lanka and Thailand. And so we would have these very interesting things about discussions and seminars. And one of the things that became very clear is that, and I'm talking about having done a master's in religion, in Indian religion, is that there is no proof. There is no empirical proof that God exists. And I'm not saying that there is no God. I'm just saying there isn't any proof. So what people say is it's their opinion, and people get very, very shirty if you are not always completely respectable about their opinion. And one of the things that I realized when I started doing all this intense pranayam in the last few years is that we have a space. Salman Rushdie talked about it a long time ago. So we've got this God-shaped space in our head, and I think because I've been looking into neuroscience and how neuroscience affects how it explains what happens in Nidra, how the brain changes and the physiology changes, and it's almost as if what we have is we have this need that's hardwired into us to believe in something. And what Nidra does that I find is very helpful is it aids people to fulfill the need that they have. So it doesn't matter what religion, what their belief is, it can reinforce it in a way that's directly and personally meaningful for each individual. And I think that's a great thing, because I don't think anyone should be telling anyone else what they should believe in. But I think as a species, it's inbuilt in us that we have to believe in something. It could be that we have a belief in organized religion, or it could be like in France, they have this kind of belief in secularism, which seems very religious to me, or in democracy, or some kind of political philosophy. Doesn't matter what it is. And Nidra, I find, can help that.
So it's like it's when I listen to you, it's like it's filling up your soul. It's it's the experience that you're gaining through that. And and part of your work also, you and Uma have set up the Cittern partnership, which promotes the further education of yoga and yoga teachers. So I'm presuming this is a way to elevate exactly what you've said, be able to take that message out to more people. So tell us about that.
So it evolved into the Yoga Nidra Network, which apparently is the most visited Nidra website in the world. I'm not quite sure how that happened. And one of the cornerstones of it is that we said we are not dogmatic. We're not saying there is only one way to do Nidra. What we're saying is there are lots of different ways. And the people that we train to teach, to facilitate Nidra for other people, we're very keen, more and more as we've been going on, to show them that they can create themselves, that they can co-create. I mean, there are some people who do Nidra training where what they're doing is they teach a script, a single individual script, or 2 or 3 or something like that, and that's the Nidra. They don't deviate from that. And what we're saying to people is, look, you work with particular populations. You might work in a hospice, or with pregnant women, or with people who have cancer, or people who can't sleep. Then you create Nidras for them that are meaningful and relevant to them, and they do, and it's very, very potent. That's one thing. Another thing, I don't know if Uma talked to you about the ethical statement, but that's a very big part of the direction that we're going in, to make sure that I'm not dogmatic, but I have a couple of things that I think very almost dogmatically about. And one of them is, it's not that I want to do good, it's just I don't want to do any harm. So anything that I'm doing with someone, I'm thinking, what can go wrong here, rather than what good can I do for them? Because I often find that people who do good as it doesn't always end up well.
No. Yeah, that's a whole other interview, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you, and I think that's really powerful. It's the consciousness, isn't it? It's the level that we're able to vibrate, our vibration, and it's not, yeah, as you say, it's like life is a journey. It's maybe that 1 week we're feeling particularly connected to this, but also, you know, those feelings can change as well according to our experience. So yeah, just having that thought there is, yeah, I get that, is the engagement. Yeah, through the process.
And I've introduced hypnotic language and clean language into Nidra. So it's like transferring a set of tools from hypnosis into a kind of yogic context, and adapting them, because they're not always completely transferable without modification. And our colleague Theo Wildcroft has encouraged us and motivated us to do a lot more trauma sensitive work, so that people who are traumatized aren't triggered by the practice of Nidra, because that's the thing that does happen. Where if you have, for example, a Nidra where someone looks down into an open grave and sees their dead body in a coffin, it's not always very relaxing. Stuff like that. And in some contexts that's fine. Like if you have someone who is in a hospice and they're getting ready for their long journey, or they want their family to get ready with consent, you know, that can work sometimes, not all of the time, sometimes in very individual cases. But so we've tried to make sure that there's less and less that can traumatize, trigger.
So again, it's the combination of the yoga nidra with the hypnotherapy, actually amalgamating more so, you know, all your knowledge, your experience into something that, you know, you're taking this is a step forward into the way that we live our lives now, and recognizing, I think, you know, what you know, how things have, yeah, I guess, you know, there's always an evolution, isn't there? And so we should be moving forward in that same vein. And
I think one of the things about this lockdown, which is now about into day 70 or thereabouts, which just seems like, gosh, it's so I've reduced what I'm doing, because I've got a whole load of courses, different things to do with Nidra. So I've tried to reduce them down. So there's a sleep, there's a thing for people to manage their anxiety, because I think there is this underlying level of panic and fear that people have, because evidently the situation that we're in with this virus isn't going to go away anytime soon, and it's very likely that things will not go swimmingly in the meantime. And I think people are understandably very, very anxious about that. So I do things to help to slow that down. And then I found that a lot of people are using this as an opportunity to explore why they're here. So I do this other thing, I call it meditations during an emergency, which is Nidra inspired. It's not Nidra, I mean, I do Nidra with it, but it's about them, showing them how to explore their mind. So it's an interface between our everyday mind and our much deeper mind, and connecting the two so that they communicate consciously and deliberately together, which I think is a really powerful thing, and it's really important. It's not a thing for everyone, but people who are really of an introspective, or they're in an introspective place right now, this is a very useful thing for them.
I mean, we're all, for many of us, we're on pause, and so we, you know, for the first time ever in our lives, we have this opportunity to actually sit back and reflect. And I mean, you know, offering a program such as that, you know, it helps that process, you know, that process, and looking at the bigger picture, because it's, you know, when have we ever been given the chance to look at our lives as conceptually as we can now and actually take a step back? We, you know, it just, who knew that it would happen in our lifetime?
And the approach that I've taken with these kind of meditative nidras or nidra meditations is that we have our everyday mind that does all our thinking, but then if we strip things back, we come back to our sense of self, and then we strip things even further back beyond that. It's more about the structure of what's going on with us individually, in our social groups, in our families, in us as people, as humans. And it can be a very profound thing for people, because it's not about inquiring with our words, it's about inquiring experientially, in trance, at a very deep level. And I show people how they can do this for themselves. I mean, some people really take the ball and they run with it, and others are much more sedate about the speed.
And it's an awareness exercise probably for some as well. So how does it work if somebody comes wanting to work with you on this? Is this a program? Is this a session? How does it work?
So I have I've started doing a thing. I called it Selfcare workshops. It's about the same length as our Nidra training, about 50 hours. But what I've done is I've distilled some practices. I've got one extended practice which has like 15 different levels of so I do workshops with people on that, with group workshops, and that works very well. And then I do it individually with them as well. Working individually is much more powerful. It's always much more powerful because the needs of the individual can be met.
You can get to the nitty gritty.
You can get to the nitty gritty. In a nutshell. And I do it so that I don't need to know beyond a certain amount what their preoccupations are. They can just say, like, this is the vessel, the container of the thing that I'm interested in or worried about. And I show them how, I give them tools and I show them how to use them, and I hold a safe space for them so that they can do the things that they need to do.
Nirlpita, finally, I wanted to also talk to you about this work that you're doing with the NHS. So you are piloting a scheme. If you can share that, and also really what is the dream with this? What is the vision? You can just share that.
So we're not formally working with the NHS. We're working with people who are in the NHS who are very, very keen for us to do things for their colleagues, specifically to help them to be less stressed and to sleep better, and to show them how to do that. And what I'd like to do is to do this on a voluntary basis. So we want to offer a big program to many people, say like 1,000 or more, to do the sleep workshop that I have, which is about 16 hours, to show them how they can sleep much better in the midst of all of this stuff that's going on with the virus, and how they can reduce their anxiety. And as part of that, what I want is them to do the questionnaire that we've been designing, so that we will have a body of evidence, an evidence-based study to show people that this stuff really works to help them to sleep and to be less stressed. And we want to start with the NHS, but like we want this for all the key workers, police, firemen, ambulance, and carers.
Yeah.
And then we want to kind of expand it into mainstream society. And it's not about belief, it's about doing things that work, that can be empirically replicated.
Wonderful.
That's my hope, so that more people know that Nidra is a really, really useful tool, and they come and do it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your words of wisdom today. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone watching, but also very grateful for your insights. And how can people get in touch with you?
Through our website, the Yoga Nidra Network. It's yoganidranetwork.org. And if they want to do workshops with me or sessions with me individually, there's somewhere on there that
on the website.
Yeah, and then Uma and I are both offering free practices for the common good. She's doing a thing at 3:30 every day, and I'm doing a Nidra meditation 3 times a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, 10 o'clock. and a sleep practice on a Friday evening.
And is that via, do they book that via Zoom, or is that on social media, or how are you delivering that?
It's on our Facebook page on the Yoga Nidra Network. They can just show up. They don't have to book. It's nice if they book, but they don't have to. It's there for anyone who can't sleep. They don't have to do yoga. They don't have to know about yoga. They just have to be someone who wants to sleep, who might be having trouble.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. And
no, thank you.
thank you.